You think breaking an empath means victory. You watched them absorb your cruelty, your lies, your betrayals. You saw them bend until you thought they broke. But Carl Jung discovered something that should terrify every narcissist who ever underestimated kindness. He called it the most terrifying transformation in human nature. The moment you push a super empath past their breaking point, you do not destroy them. You awaken something you cannot control. Have you ever felt a switch flip inside you when suddenly everything became clear? That moment Jung documented is not weakness surfacing. It is power remembering itself. Here is what narcissists never understand about empaths. They see emotional intelligence as emotional weakness. They treat sensitivity like a defect, kindness like stupidity. For years, they use the empath as their personal dumping ground. Gaslighting becomes daily routine. Manipulation becomes conversation. Emotional abuse becomes normal. The narcissist trains the empath to doubt their own reality, to question their own perceptions, to apologize for things they never did. Every day brings new accusations. Every conversation becomes a minefield. Every interaction leaves the empath wondering if maybe they really are too sensitive, too emotional, too dramatic. But what the narcissist misses is this crucial detail. The empath is not just suffering. The empath is collecting data. Every lie you told, they catalogued. Every manipulation tactic you used, they filed away. Every insecurity you accidentally revealed, they noted. Every time you projected your shame onto them, they recognized the pattern even while absorbing the pain. Their mind is not a victim's diary. It is a strategist's war room. And you just spent years giving them complete access to your psychological blueprint. Most people think empaths are fragile because they feel everything. Wrong. Empaths are dangerous precisely because they feel everything. They do not just hear your words. They read the micro-expressions you cannot control. They sense the emotions you are trying to hide. They feel the intentions behind your actions before you fully form them yourself. Jung discovered this in his clinical work. Empaths possess what he called differentiated perception. They see patterns in human behavior that escape everyone else. When you lie, they feel the energy shift in the room. When you hide something, they sense the omission. When you manipulate, they recognize the tactic even if they cannot name it yet. And here is the part that should make narcissists nervous. Empaths have been watching you this whole time. Not just watching, studying. They know your triggers better than you know them yourself. They understand your fears because they felt them radiating from you during your vulnerable moments. They mapped your insecurities because you projected them constantly onto everyone around you. The empath knows exactly what words will devastate you, exactly what truths will shatter your carefully constructed false self, exactly which buttons to push to make you feel as small as you made them feel for years. They have always known. They just chose not to use that knowledge, until you pushed them too far. The breaking point arrives differently for each empath, but Jung identified the common trigger: betrayal, not small betrayal, not the daily deceptions they learn to expect from you. The final betrayal, the one that makes them realize they cannot save you from yourself. Maybe you cheated with someone they trusted. Maybe you stole money you swore you would never touch. Maybe you hurt their child or their parent or someone vulnerable they were protecting. The specific act matters less than what it represents. Proof that their compassion changed nothing. Evidence that your promises were always lies. Confirmation that they wasted years on someone incapable of growth, unwilling to do the internal work that real change requires. And in that moment of absolute clarity, something shifts. Jung did not call this a breakdown. He called this a breakthrough. This is when the super empath is born through what Jung termed shadow integration. All those years, the empath suppressed their own darkness to make room for yours. They denied their anger to absorb yours. They silenced their boundaries to accommodate your chaos. They dimmed their power so you would not feel threatened by their strength. They made themselves smaller so you could feel bigger. But shadow integration means reclaiming every suppressed part of themselves. The anger they never expressed, the boundaries they never enforced, the power they always possessed but never wielded, the darkness they denied because they thought being light meant having no shadows. When an empath integrates their shadow, they do not lose their gift. They learn to aim it. This is where the narcissist's worst nightmare begins. You thought you knew this person. You thought you controlled them through guilt, through shame, through making them question their own sanity. You had a whole playbook of manipulation tactics that worked reliably for years. But the integrated empath operates from a completely different consciousness now. They see you with perfect clarity because they are no longer looking through the filter of hope. Hope that you would change. Hope that you meant your apologies. Hope that somewhere underneath your cruelty lived the person you pretended to be during the love-bombing phase. Empaths aren't broken. They're alchemists in progress. The Alchemist's Path gives you drills, Jung-based boundaries, and 3 exclusive chapter videos to turn overwhelm into clarity. By Surreal Mind, 236-page downloadable ebook in stock. Begin now at thesurrealmind.com. That hope is dead, and what replaces it is pure, undistorted perception. The empath's mind becomes a strategist's war room, and you are the enemy whose every weakness they documented for years. Remember all those times you thought they were not paying attention? They were paying attention to everything. Every time you blamed them for your failures. Every time you twisted their words into weapons against them. Every time you made them feel crazy for seeing the truth. Every time you raged at them for noticing your lies. They remember all of it, not with the fuzzy details of emotional memory, with the crystal clarity of someone who studied you like a psychologist studies a case file. Like a detective studies a criminal. Like a scientist studies a dangerous specimen. Jung observed something chilling about integrated empaths. They possess what he called the mirror effect. For years, the empath absorbed your pain, your rage, your shame. They took your emotional garbage and tried to transform it into something useful. They made excuses for your behavior. They explained away your cruelty. They convinced themselves that you were wounded, that you were struggling, that underneath the abuse lived someone worth saving. But shadow integration means they stop absorbing. Instead, they start reflecting. When you rage at them, they stay calm. When you try to guilt them, they feel nothing. When you attempt your old manipulation tactics, they watch you with the detached interest of a scientist observing a predictable experiment. This drives narcissists into panic mode. Their entire identity depends on getting emotional reactions from others. They need you afraid, they need you angry, they need you desperately trying to prove you are not what they accuse you of being. But the integrated empath gives them nothing. No fear, no anger, no desperate justifications, no frantic explanations, just calm, clear observation. And that calm destroys the narcissist more effectively than any rage ever could, because in that calm, the narcissist sees their reflection, and the reflection is ugly. The reflection shows them exactly what they are, without the distortion of the empath's hope, without the softening filter of the empath's compassion, without the generous interpretations the empath always offered before. The integrated empath becomes what Jung called a psychological architect. They can dismantle your reality with surgical precision. They do not need to yell. They do not need to rage. They do not need to match your energy or sink to your level. They just speak truth. Specific, undeniable, documented truth. They remind you of the exact words you said before you changed your story. They point out the pattern you have been repeating for years that you swore was different this time. They describe your behavior so accurately that you cannot deny it, cannot twist it, cannot make them doubt what they clearly observed. They quote your own contradictions back to you. They lay out the timeline of your lies so clearly that your gaslighting attempts look pathetic. This is not revenge. Revenge would require emotional investment. This is simply the empath using years of collected data to show you exactly who you are. And narcissists cannot survive that level of truth. Their whole identity is constructed on lies they tell themselves. The integrated empath walks through those lies like tissue paper. They dismantle your false self with the precision of a surgeon removing a tumor. And you feel yourself shrinking back to your actual size, which is so much smaller than the grandiose image you projected. Here is what terrifies narcissists most about this transformation. The empath does not need anything from them anymore. Not validation, not apology, not the fantasy of who they pretended to be. The integrated empath sees clearly that you cannot give what you do not possess, cannot love because you do not know love, cannot change because you are not willing to do the internal work change requires, cannot apologize sincerely because you lack the self-awareness to recognize your own behavior. And once the empath accepts this reality, your power over them ends, completely, permanently, irrevocably. You try the old tactics. Guilt, they feel nothing. Shame, they feel nothing. Threats, they feel nothing. Promise to change, they do not believe you. Cry, they recognize manipulation. Rage, they stay calm. Play victim, they see through it. Every weapon in your arsenal suddenly fails because it required the empath to care about your opinion, fear your anger, or hope for your approval. The integrated empath cares about none of those things anymore. They do not hate you. Hate would mean you still matter. They are simply indifferent, and that indifference is your death sentence. Jung documented what happens next in his most dangerous cases. The narcissist experiences what he called narcissistic collapse. Their entire identity shatters when they lose their primary source of supply. And make no mistake, the empath was always their primary supply. Empaths provide the highest quality narcissistic fuel, their genuine emotions, their deep caring, their willingness to see the best in people, their capacity to feel your pain and try to heal it, their endless patience with your repeated failures, their generous interpretations of your worst behavior. Narcissists feed on that. They drain it. They corrupt it. They take something pure and beautiful and they twist it into fuel for their own emptiness. But when the empath leaves, that supply cuts off permanently. The narcissist might find new victims, but those victims will never provide the same depth of supply the empath offered. Because the empath gave from a place of genuine love, future victims will be more guarded, more skeptical, less willing to sacrifice themselves completely. The narcissist just lost the best supply they will ever find, and some part of them knows it. That knowledge drives them to desperate measures. They might try to hoover the empath back. Love bombing 2.0. Suddenly they understand everything wrong they did. Suddenly, they are ready for therapy, ready to change, ready to be the person they should have been all along. Suddenly they want another chance. The integrated empath sees through all of it, because they remember the last 5 times you made the same promises. They documented the pattern. They know this is just another manipulation attempt, another performance, another lie wrapped in the appearance of vulnerability. This is where the narcissist learns their most painful lesson. The empath's indifference is their ultimate punishment, not the empath's anger. Anger means you still matter, not the empath's pain. Pain means you still affect them. The narcissist's worst nightmare is the empath's complete indifference. When the empath looks at you and feels nothing, no anger, no hurt, no hope, just the mild disinterest you might feel toward a stranger on the street, maybe even pity. The kind of pity you feel for someone who is trapped in a prison of their own making and refuses every key offered to them. That indifference tells you something the narcissist cannot accept. You are not special. You are not unique. You are just another case study in manipulation that they finally solved. And now that they understand you completely, you bore them. Jung observed that this indifference often sends narcissists into rage spirals. They cannot accept that someone sees through them completely and simply does not care. It violates their core belief that they are fascinating, important, worthy of intense emotion. The integrated empath proves that belief false just by walking away without looking back. By building a life where the narcissist does not exist, by finding peace in their absence. But here is the beautiful part Jung documented. The integrated empath does not become cold. They do not lose their capacity for love, for connection, for deep feeling. They become selectively generous with those gifts. They still love deeply. They just love people who are capable of loving them back. They still care intensely. They just care about people who are worth that care. They still see the best in people. They just do not ignore the worst anymore. They do not make excuses for bad behavior. They do not convince themselves that potential equals reality. They do not sacrifice their own well-being on the altar of someone else's possible growth. Shadow integration does not destroy the empath's gift. It protects the gift from those who would abuse it. The integrated empath becomes invincible to future manipulation, not because they stop feeling, but because they trust what they feel. When someone triggers that familiar discomfort, they listen to it immediately instead of explaining it away. When someone's words contradict their actions, they believe the actions instead of the promises. When someone makes them feel crazy, they trust their sanity instead of doubting it. They learned the most important lesson. Their perception was always accurate. They just needed to stop letting manipulators convince them otherwise. They needed to stop being gaslit into doubting what they clearly saw, clearly felt, clearly knew to be true. This transformation ripples through every area of the empath's life. Toxic family members who relied on guilt suddenly find it does not work anymore. The mother who weaponized disappointment discovers her emotional manipulation bounces off her child's new boundaries. Friends who took advantage of kindness discover the empath has boundaries now. The friend who always needed favors but never offered help finds their calls going unanswered. Co-workers who dumped their work realize the empath says no without explanation or guilt. The colleague who relied on the empath's inability to refuse suddenly has to do their own job. The integrated empath stops participating in their own exploitation. They do not announce this change dramatically. They do not make speeches about their new boundaries. They do not explain or justify or defend their choices. They just quietly enforce them. And people who benefited from the old, unprotected empath suddenly feel nervous because they sense something fundamental shifted. The empath's presence feels different, more solid, more certain, less available for manipulation. Predators avoid integrated empaths instinctively. They can sense that their usual tactics will fail before they even try them. Meanwhile, authentic people feel safer around the integrated empath than they ever did before. Because the empath's boundaries protect genuine connection too. They create space where real relationships can flourish without the chaos of users, takers, and manipulators. Jung spent decades studying what separated empaths who integrated their shadow from empaths who stayed trapped in victimhood. The difference was not intelligence, not education, not even the severity of abuse they endured. The difference was willingness to see clearly, to stop making excuses for inexcusable behavior, to stop believing potential instead of accepting reality, to stop sacrificing themselves on the altar of someone else's possible growth. Integrated empaths reached a point where they valued their own peace more than anyone else's comfort, where they chose their own truth over anyone else's lies, where they protected their own energy instead of endlessly giving it away. That shift from self-sacrifice to self-protection is what Jung called individuation. Becoming fully yourself by reclaiming every part you gave away or denied to please others. Taking back the power you handed over to keep the peace. Recovering the voice you silenced to avoid conflict. Rediscovering the strength you hid to make others feel comfortable. The narcissist never sees this transformation coming because they fundamentally misunderstand the empath. They think the empath's kindness comes from weakness, from need, from lack of options. They cannot comprehend that someone could be genuinely kind by choice. Someone could be empathetic from strength rather than fear. Someone could care deeply without being desperate for approval. This blind spot becomes their downfall because they keep pushing, keep manipulating, keep betraying, assuming the empath will always absorb it like they always did before. They mistake patience for weakness. They confuse compassion with stupidity. They interpret forgiveness as permission to transgress again, until suddenly they push one time too many, and the person standing in front of them is not the accommodating, hopeful, endlessly forgiving empath they thought they controlled. It is someone who knows them completely, sees them clearly, and no longer cares what they think, say, or do. Someone who walked away and never looked back. Someone who found peace in their absence. Someone who realized that the best revenge is living well without you in their life. If you're watching this, you probably recognize yourself somewhere in this story. Maybe you are the empath who is still suffering, still hoping, still making excuses for someone who does not deserve them. Maybe you are the empath who recently integrated their shadow, and you are testing your new boundaries. Maybe you are somewhere in between, feeling the shift beginning, but not yet complete. Wherever you are, remember what Jung discovered. Your sensitivity is not your weakness. Your empathy is not naivety. Your kindness is not stupidity. These are sophisticated abilities that you protected by suppressing your power. But you do not have to suppress your power to access your gifts. Shadow integration means you can be deeply compassionate and powerfully boundaried simultaneously. You can see the best in people while acknowledging the worst. You can love without sacrificing yourself. You can care without losing yourself. You can be everything you are while refusing to tolerate what you are not. The narcissist who betrayed you did not break you. They freed you. They showed you exactly why your boundaries matter. They proved that not everyone deserves your gift. They forced you to choose yourself. And that choice transforms victims into forces of nature. Subscribe if you are ready to embrace your dark side for good. Because shadow integration is not about becoming cruel. It is about becoming whole. It is about loving yourself as fiercely as you once loved people who did not deserve it. It is about using your power consciously instead of suppressing it unconsciously. It is about becoming the version of yourself that knows exactly who you are and refuses to pretend otherwise for anyone's comfort. The narcissist's biggest mistake was thinking they could break you. They just forced you to become unbreakable. In The Alchemist's Path, perception training for empaths, you'll turn overwhelm into wisdom with practical drills, Jung-inspired boundaries, and step-by-step perception training. This guide includes 3 exclusive chapter videos to deepen each lesson. Written by Surreal Mind, 236 pages, beautifully designed 8.5 by 11 downloadable ebook, in stock now. Start your training today. Feel deeply while thinking clearly. Get The Alchemist's Path at thesurrealmind.com. Thanks for watching. See you in the next dimension.